We are live, Unchained TV, with the final day of the trial, except for the closing arguments that are going to be tomorrow, and then the jury gets the case. But today had bombshell testimony from a veterinarian. We're going to go straight out to Curtis Walmer, who is there with Wing Chung, the attorney for Alexandra Paul, the co-defendant. Go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jane. Today was interesting. We weren't sure if everything was going to be finalized today. So what happened today was Dr. Kirsten Rosenberg. She's the primary vet and caregiver at Happy Hen Animal Sanctuary. She's testified in DXC trials before. 8 times she's been on the stand for various cases. She's also testified in legislative hearings and meetings and whatnot. But so she took the stand today. She got cross-examined by the prosecution, by the state, obviously, and then there was some redirect back to Wayne and Chris and the team there, the defense, and then there was a pretty lengthy kind of back and forth between counsel with regards to permitting another witness who was ultimately permitted. His name was Eric Shane Sutton. He went by Shane Sutton, who is a VP of operations and consulting, or operations, and I can't remember, accounting. He was an accountant, operations and accountant for Foster Farms. And one of the funniest things, it was objected, but Wayne tried to ask the guy, one of the last questions Wayne asked this dude was, has there ever been another occasion where a VP or an exec for the company has been called to testify in a petty theft matter? It was like immediately objected and sustained by the judge. But I think Wayne was just trying to highlight the absurdity of a VP of this mega corporation, this mega factory farm, being called to testify in a petty theft case. So that was one of the things that made me chuckle today.
And can we possibly, thank you, those are great insights. Can we hear from Wayne?
Yeah, I'll take you over here.
Yeah.
I'll let him know that y'all are on.
Group of people.
We got Dane here that probably want to ask you some questions. Sure. I gotta head out and start preparing for closing, but.
Oh yeah, I think you don't want to talk to me, Wayne, but put that mic on.
I'm going to give you all the time you need.
Okay, let me ask you, it was bombshell testimony. We're going to play it in a second, where Dr. Kirsten Rosenberg says these chickens were very sick. They had some form of very serious illness. What was the jury's reaction to that, Wayne?
I wasn't watching the jury carefully, really at all, because I was questioning Dr. Rosenberg. But I mean, I think the courtroom's reaction, we could just feel the tenor of the courtroom changed pretty dramatically. We realized we thought this was a petty theft case. This is actually much bigger than petty theft, but not for the reasons the prosecution thinks. Not because these women committed a crime, but because Foster Farms is committing crimes, not just against animals, but against human beings. And the fact that we saw so many diseases in these birds, not just diseases that kill birds, but diseases that kill human beings, should be of enormous concern to every citizen of the United States. And let's hope that actually happens.
And where is the USDA in all of this? I mean, what first occurred to me is, oh my gosh, the prosecution's trying to say, oh, these women just ran up there and grabbed these first chickens they saw. Well, even if you accept the prosecution's premise, these 2 chickens were very sick. So it kind of, raises the specter, if they had picked any chickens, would they also be very sick? Which raises the question, where is the United States Department of Agriculture?
Yeah, it's a great question. Where are they? I don't even blame the individual inspectors, because I've spoken to a number of inspectors, including high-level inspectors, and Kirsten has as well, who feel completely powerless. I think the quote Pat Basu gave the New York Times a couple of years ago. Pat Basu was a former chief veterinarian of the Food Safety Inspection Service, and the quote, and I'm summarizing it, is, "No one dares stand up to big pork, not even the U.S. government." And that's a little terrifying. That industry has so much power that even the government that is supposed to be protecting animals, protecting us, frankly, is so scared of the influence and power of this industry that they won't stand up for them. I mean, we need our government to stand up for the people against big industry, but unfortunately, it's not happening.
So what are your key points that you feel like the jury has to with them as they go in to deliberate tomorrow. Tomorrow is the big moment, closing arguments, and then the jury gets this case.
Yeah, I don't want to give away too much because, unfortunately, the prosecution is following all over social media and watching all our videos because they're just so interesting, I guess, for them. But I will say what I already said in opening, which is, to me, this case is about 3 things. One is there's no intent. These women did not have criminal intent. To prove a theft, you have to prove not only that someone did the act, but they had the right state of mind that shows they were acting in a criminal fashion. And these women weren't trying to steal anything. They weren't trying to take anything of value. They're trying to help some animals. They're collapsed on the ground of a slaughterhouse structure, and that's no different than someone breaking into a hot car to save a dog. It's not vandalism. That's not theft. That's trying to save a life.
All right.
Second point we'll make is that even if they did have criminal intent, you actually have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the things taken had some value. And I think the overwhelming evidence, massively overwhelming evidence that we presented shows that these animals were not just lacking value, they were a liability. And the third point I want to make, which is a more conceptual point that kind of brings the two together, is if you just look at the motivations, the act, the aftermath together, what happened here was not a theft, it was a rescue. And rescuing animals just isn't a crime. So that's what I said in the opening. That's what I'll say tomorrow in some point.
I want to give anybody on our panel an opportunity. Wayne's got to go prepare. Okay, Donnie, go ahead.
Yes. So Wayne, after Dr. Rosenberg gave her testimony, what did the prosecution do? Was there a cross-examination, and what did that look like?
So they tried to cross-examine her and make her sound like an animal rights kook, and it totally failed. In fact, when they examined her, they actually pulled out some experience she had that was very, honestly, kind of prestigious. So they said, but all your testimony is from animal advocates, right? She's like, well, no, I actually just testified for the state Senate of California. And I hadn't actually pulled that out of her because I was just trying to move quickly through her testimony. And so that was good. They called a rebuttal witness, Shane Sutton, a high-level executive at Foster Farms. So I think if we hadn't crossed him, he said some things that would have been obstacles for us. But I think the cross-examination went pretty much about as well as I could have hoped.
All right, one more question then, because I know you. Nathan, go.
Wayne, how is the judge going to charge the jury on value? Market value or intrinsic value?
Just value.
Market value? Good.
No, not even market value, just value. That's all the jury's going to hear. And if the jury asks any questions, I don't know if there are going to be any further clarifying instructions. I think it's just going to be value. We just had kind of the charge conference, so the instructions are finalized. And what the jury will be charged with is the property at issue can be of any value, however select. Those are, I think, the exact words that will be presented before the jury. Want to get going? Let's go. I got to get going, folks.
Thank you, Wayne Chung. Let's hear it for him. Wow, an amazing job. Oh my gosh. Thank you. And Curtis, I know you were playing some bongo drums there while Wayne was talking. If you scratch yourself, it kind of, sounds like a bongo drum. But I want to thank you. Don't go anywhere. Would you be willing to hang with us for a few minutes, because you were in the courtroom and we want to hear what your observations were? Okay.
Yeah. I'll hang out here. I thought it was starting at 4:30, so we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Now I want to play that intense moment. We're going to get to Alexandra Paul's testimony, but let's hear what this veterinarian said, because it just knocked me off my chair.
These were 2 extremely sick chickens. At the time, I was concerned they might not survive. And they were infected with an extremely contagious coronavirus called infectious bronchitis virus. It's a very, up to 100% of birds that are exposed will get sick. Very contagious virus. They also were infected with 2 bacteria that can make human beings sick.
And what were those 2 bacteria?
Enterococcus faecium and E. coli.
Beyond kind of the infections you thought these birds had, were they exhibiting any symptoms you were concerned about as a veterinarian?
Yes, they were very lethargic. They had poor appetites. They had pale combs, and they were they were unable to walk.
Your Honor, I'm gonna ask permission to play for the witness.
That's the key. I mean, I was shocked. Now, I want to make a very big point. There are several types of coronaviruses, and nobody on this panel is a scientist. That said, Dotsie Bausch, what was your reaction to hearing that? Oh, you need to unmute.
I'm wondering if there is going to be another trial after this for safety of the public, because there are a variety of different coronaviruses, but this is one that sounds extremely contagious if it infects 100% of birds. So like you said, I don't know if it's contagious to humans, but 2 bacteria that are very serious and have killed people, these chickens are infected with. So how do we not take that information and say, hold on a minute, Foster Farms, we got a whole other problem here. I don't know how you just ignore that, how you just let that slide through.
I mean, it is a really kind of shocking thing. I was shocked just as an observer, like this is coming out on the last day of testimony. I didn't really understand that. Nathan, can you explain, like, what about discovery? Wouldn't this have been out there the whole time?
Well, remember, this is a defense witness. You know, we know that the judge has tried to limit the prosecution's case at their request and make this just about the video. And the defense is doing its job by providing the context. And Dr. Rosenberg, her value here, and from what I saw, you know, it seemed like she knows her stuff. We've seen her, we saw her in the Smithfield trial also. You know, she was deemed an expert witness, which lends her instant credibility. But most importantly, as far as this trial goes, her testimony proves that Alexandra and Alicia were right. What they saw was correct, that these birds, even in the limited time they had an opportunity to observe them, they were really sick. So, you know, Dr. Rosenberg really did a service for Wayne's client today.
Well, if you see them going up, okay, the prosecution has made this point that, wow, you really picked those birds pretty quickly, you know, kind of implying, well, you grab the first birds that you could possibly see. Well, it turns out that these birds are extremely sick. I honestly think now that raises the question, you know, how many other birds were sick? You heard that this is highly contagious. Again, none of us here are scientists, but I think that the impact of this, it definitely, as Wayne said, is now not just a question of a trial about theft. This expands it. And, you know, you watched all of the testimony, Mick Davudian, of Dr. Schurston, or a huge percentage of it. What's your takeaway?
Well, just to quote, because I don't want to quote her out of context, I wrote it down. So in addition to that, she said a lot of these viruses are immune to medication and medication resistant, I believe is what she said. And quote unquote, this is what she said with regards to the Enterococcus bacteria. She said, these are dangerous, deadly pathogens that can kill people. 66.7% of humans infected with Enterococcus bacteria die.
Oh, dear. Well, once again, I want to stress that I am not a medical doctor, nor a scientist, nor is anybody else on this panel, but we did hear the testimony, and it is pretty disturbing to me. And my first question is, like, why is this coming out at this trial? Like, where is the United States Department of Agriculture, which recently, I think it bears repeating, and I'm going to find the headline from yesterday. The USDA announced more than $43 million investment in meat and poultry processing research expansion and innovation. Like, where the hell is the USDA when it comes to the slaughter tracks, Ellen Dent? Wait, I hit the wrong thing. Go ahead. Oh,
I was like, am I off? You know, I am just in awe. I'm in awe that, you know, these findings are coming out. I'm not surprised. I mean, look at how these chickens are raised. Look at the condition they come in on the truck. I wouldn't be surprised if every single chicken on that truck is sick and has the ability to make the consumer, the person eating their flesh, sick as well. I mean, you hear about people getting sick with E. coli all the time, you know, from tainted flesh. And so, it's really just not surprising to me at all. And I'm glad that they were able to get it into court in front of the jury so the jury can think about that, especially, if they're consuming their bodies still, it might be something to take a second thought about.
Wow. Okay. Well, this is a very pivotal day in the case. We thank everybody for being here as we do the live trial coverage. Again, this should be something that's on CNN, on MSNBC, on Fox News, on all the networks, and on the headlines of all the newspapers. But let's remember, when COVID-19 shattered our world for going on 3 years now, how much coverage was given to where did it start? Yes, a lot on the conspiracy theory, which is the lab, which may be true, but the first indications were the Wuhan wet market. Either way, animals were being abused. They were being experimented on in the Wuhan lab. They were being slaughtered and chopped up in the wet market. But precious little focus on that animal common denominator. Where is our media talking about these problems? Carla Cabral, you've played reporter for us along with the amazing Curtis out there. Do you wonder, why is the news media not totally over this, totally on top of this case?
Oh, you have to think that the media, the larger media outlets, are not going to touch this because they know from where their bread is vegan buttered, as we say. So they're not going to touch this because as Wayne just said earlier, the power dynamic. These outlets, they don't want to lose advertisers, they don't want to lose funding, and these corporations are way too powerful. They hold too much power over too many areas of our lives. And we see this, there are lots of diseases that come from these factory farms. Many of the diseases that these animals have are not zoonotic, but there are some that are zoonotic, and E. coli is a huge one. We've seen this over the years, how E. coli has devastated people, killed people. And oftentimes people talk about lettuce being infected with E. coli, but where they don't go is the next step to understand that a lot of that lettuce was sprayed with feces coming from these factory farms. And so nobody wants to go all the way down and see where this is coming from.
Yeah, and these protests that are happening outside the district attorney's office, outside court, by Direct Action Everywhere, which both defendants are members of that organization. Again, another way to try to get the public's attention. But those protests have not been covered by the media, to my understanding. Have you seen any coverage of it? Curtis, have you seen any? You're there on the scene. And those are good protests. They're colorful.
Yeah, no, there hasn't been much media attention here in Merced. I know that Cassie King, who is DXC's media personnel, primary person reaching out to try to get things rolling, has been working very diligently. Hasn't even been actually at court because she's just been glued to her laptop and her phone back at the Airbnb, just trying to pitch these press releases to everybody and anyone, and there hasn't been a whole lot. So yeah, I mean, we're trying, Cassie's trying, we're trying to get this out today. So just to give you an idea of what some of the stuff that we're doing here, or I'm doing, this morning I was on first shift for Twitter. So I was in there for the first hour of court. Then I ran out to tweet. Then at lunch, I had to run down the street to this internet cafe because the internet here sucks and the internet at our Airbnb sucks. And I'm trying to get the footage uploaded to our media server and to YouTube. I was actually able to get that first YouTube clip out, rush back, get back in there and tweet out. So we're doing everything within our power, to get this out there and to let people know what's going on and try to get the media interested and excited about it. So it's not a lack of effort. I can tell you that. You know, we're all doing our part. Carla's done a great job helping out with things, and yeah, it sucks. It's unfortunate that we're not getting the coverage, but maybe there'll be coverage, once the verdict happens. Maybe there'll be a lot more stuff that gets rolling, and that will more than likely be tomorrow, because the closing arguments are going to be in the morning. I'm pretty sure they hashed out jury instructions today, so there shouldn't be any more matters or motions or any last minute things that happen. So tomorrow should just be, closing arguments in the morning, maybe up until lunch, and then jury deliberation after that.
And we're going to be coming back tomorrow afternoon, hopefully with Curtis telling us the verdict. We're going to have trial watch coverage. And this is why we started Unchained TV, which is a nonprofit free global streaming network. It is global. It's not in China, but it's in almost every other part of the world. And we just get this information out there. We're streaming this on the app, and you can also download that for free on your phone. So that's why we're doing it. I was in the mainstream media for 40 years. I know how it works. I know that they don't cover this, but they will cover it if there's a dramatic court experience. In other words, when Wayne Shung was acquitted in a similar case in Utah for documenting the horrific conditions inside a factory farm and taking out 2 sick piglets. When he was acquitted, yes, there was coverage. But I mean, you shouldn't have to risk going to prison for a decade in order to get coverage. That is absolutely wrong. So I want to go to the 2 women who are facing possible 6 months in prison. Now, Alexandra Paul, who is the actress and activist, testified, as well as her co-defendant, Alicia Santurio. Let's start with Alexandra's testimony and let's analyze it.
I've always wanted to help. It's in my family's DNA. So I was a junior lifeguard when I was a teenager, and that helped me get the role for which I'm most known, which you mentioned in your opening. So it was the television series Baywatch, but I've also been in over 100 other television shows, even though that's probably going to be on my gravestone. But I was a junior lifeguard. That probably helped me get that job. And I also was an emergency medical technician for 23 years, certified.
I thought that was really incredible to humanize her and show that, she's one of you, mostly female jury. Dotsy, what are your thoughts on how she handled herself on the stand?
Yeah, very cool cucumber, that one. She is very adamant about everyone getting their certification for CPR. I mean, she carries that medical background with her everywhere, and still to this day, and stays very up to date with that, so that she's just walking on a street and somebody collapses next to her, she's able to save their lives. Like she said, it's in her DNA, it's in her family's DNA. But I can't wait to see more. I've been dying to see this coverage of her on the stand. She's incredible.
All right, let's play another clip of Alexandra Paul talking about why she took those chickens with her co-defendant off of the slaughter truck.
We also choose these animals because they tell best the story of what's going on behind these closed doors, and we document it and we share it with the world because nobody else is showing people what's going on. The only reason people know what's going on behind these closed doors is because of animal investigators.
I thought that was really significant, Donnie, because it explains her real motive, not a motive that the prosecution wants to put on her.
Yeah, she's so unassuming and so classy. It's disarming. And I can't imagine that the jury doesn't have the same reaction that we do when we see her testify. Jane, I just wanted to touch base on Dr. Rosenberg's testimony again. She mentioned Enterococcus faecium and E. coli, and I can't help but think that the jurors, when they hear this, they're thinking about their own lives and their own families, who they're going to be feeding that night, possibly with the Foster Farms chicken. And you just can't help but wonder if and how hearing those words will affect the way they the way they vote when it comes time to deciding whether the defendants are guilty or innocent. It just really struck me as being sort of dramatic. And also with the avian flu outbreak that surely most people have heard about, I can't help but wonder if the jurors are thinking, God, you have all these chickens intensively confined in these crates. We know that they're sick because a veterinarian just testified to the fact. We know that they're covered in feces because a truck driver testified to that fact. Like, what's going on here? Like, the whole system's broken, and I feel like the defense is painting a very good picture of that. And is that going to play a role in how the jurors decide what to do?
And it's at the time that we read the Foster Farms statement. The company says, it puts the highest priority on the welfare of the flocks entrusted in our care. This is a direct quote from Foster Farms. And we invite Foster Farms on anytime. We would love to dialogue with you. In 2013, the company became the first major poultry producer to be independently audited and certified by the American Humane Association and continues to receive outstanding animal welfare audit scores. Mick Davudian, you were watching some of the testimony where that was brought up. And what was some of the comments by the defense witnesses regarding that certification that Foster Farms has?
I believe, if I remember correctly, the word fraud was used. Basically, the certification is a fraud. It was bought and paid for. The factory farms, to get that seal, they actually pay American Humane Association for the certification. So an American Humane Certification is in business basically to get these funding from these factories and then in turn go around and give them the certificate. So.
And I have to say, no offense to you, Mick, but I can't independently confirm any of that. And we invite the American Humane Association along with Foster Farms on anytime at all to respond further. Let's play another clip of Dotsie. How about if we go to a cross-examination? It was testy. I'm going to say there was, some back and forth. And let's see here.
Open rescue is going into facilities where there's animal abuse and documenting that animal abuse and rescuing the animals who need medical care. And that's the rescue part. And then the open part is that we don't cover our faces. We are completely transparent about what we're doing because that's an important ethic to us and because the companies that we're investigating are not transparent. And also because we believe that what we're doing is legal and right.
And here's the cross.
So you said you didn't have the intent to deprive Foster Farms of their property. Do you recognize that that chicken was property of Foster Farms while it was in the truck?
Foster Farms treated it like garbage, so
Well, hold on, that wasn't my question. You recognize that was property of Foster Farms while it was in that truck? That was my question.
Oh, that was a Foster Farms truck, I knew that, yes.
So Foster Farms owned chickens that were in the truck? Mm-hmm. And it was destined for the Foster Farms processing facility?
Yes.
Right ahead of you?
Yes.
So you're a member of a group called Direct Action Everywhere, is that correct?
Yes.
What is Direct Action Everywhere? It's a group that promotes this concept that you're talking about open rescue?
It promotes open rescue and the right to rescue animals who are in need and suffering, yes.
So we've got two members of Direct Action Everywhere here. Let's go to Curtis. What was your reaction to the cross-examination? It's like a chess game or a fencing match. How did Dotsie do?
I think you meant Alexandra. I don't think Dotsie was on the stand.
Oh, sorry.
But no, you're good. Disclaimer: my phone's at 5%. It's probably going to die, so I might have to bounce after this. But you mentioned it. It's like a fencing match. I think traditionally it's normally like a fencing match, but when our side is just so transparent, and we want to be transparent, and we're so honest, we have nothing to hide. To me, it's great. It's awesome. It's like you took, I think the same guy, Travis Colby for the state, asked Alicia, well, the chickens are healthy now, you said, right? And she's like, yes. Do you want to give the chickens back, or did you ever plan on giving the chickens back? And she paused for a second and she said, no. Like, why would I do that? they were being abused, they were being neglected. So I just think it's great because literally our side has nothing to hide. We have not afraid of any of these questions. Like, throw them at us. We want to, and that's it.
Next time, dude, when you know you're gonna be part of this, get that charger out. Get that charger out. But we're gonna get him tomorrow. So in any case, remove. Your reactions, everybody, to the cross-examination, because it is a, you could call it a knife fight, a chess match, it's a battle. How about we start with Nathan? You're the attorney.
Well, I mean, you know, the prosecutor is going to try to score points, and they're going to try to stick to their message. You know, making this as simple of a case as possible. You know, I mean, Alexandra she's a dream client. You know, we often don't put our clients on the stand when charged with crimes for a multitude of reasons. But Alexandra, I mean, you can't vilify her. If you attempt to do it, you're going to look terrible before the jury. She's being honest. So really what they're going to do is they're going to actually try to somewhat vilify DXE and in turn try to prove the theft. And that's it. But, you know, Alexandra, you know, the defense did a great job humanizing her in the first place by giving her background. And, you know, in courts, unfortunately, and it's something that I really can't stand as a defense attorney, and even just as a human, our clients are referred to in courtrooms as the defendants. They don't even get a name. And you know, that's why it is so crucial for attorneys to humanize our clients and give their backgrounds, talk about their families, talk about their work, talk about their education, talk about their volunteering, as much as we can possibly get away with, because we want the jury to like our clients. And it's hard to convict somebody who you don't dislike and you respect what they did. So,
and speaking of character witnesses and bolstering her character, Daphne Zuniga, who you probably remember from Melrose Place, she's an actress. And by the way, the prosecution keeps objecting anytime it's like, well, what show were you on? Objection. They don't want it to come out that these people are famous. Just in case they're not recognized. But here's just a snippet of what Daphne Zuniga said about Alexandra Paul.
When we first met in 1986, she was starting an organization called Young Artists United, and she was getting young actors to go out to high schools around the country and talk to them about self-esteem. And she knew that they looked up to us because we were on the screen, and she wanted to help them with that platform that we had. So we used to do these assemblies around the country.
And what was your impression of Alexandra when you met her initially?
I was hugely impressed with her. Shortly after we met, she went off to the Great Peace March to walk across the country in the name of peace.
Wow. Now, Dotsie, you're a dear friend of Alexandra's, and I know you were itching to even be one of those testifying to her character. But that's pretty big, having Daphne Zuniga say, you know, hey, she cares about people too, not just animals, because so often people like to say, well, you don't care about people because you care about animals, and it's not an either or.
No, not at all. I know. Yeah, she's by far one of the kindest and most honest people I've ever come across, ever. She always stands behind what she says she's going to do, and she's honest about what she cares about and why. And she just is incapable of hiding anything. And it seemed in the beginning like this trial was about revealing something, right? Or revealing many things about the defense, about Alexandra and Alicia. But what it seems like to me it's turning into is revealing all sorts of egregious acts by Foster Farm. And I think because they didn't prepare very well, that we've heard that a lot from Alexandra and from Wayne. It's been completely flipped. They weren't expecting this to go this way, where all of these acts are being revealed, including bacteria these chickens have that can kill people.
Yeah, and I was just showing a Twitter from Dr. Crystal Heath, who is a veterinarian who runs Our Honor, and there's a lot of tweeting going on about this trial as well. So even though you're not getting a whole bunch of reporters there at the courthouse, the word's getting out, and that's why social media is so important, along with the Unchained TV app, to get the truth out there. Now, I want to play another clip of Alexandra Paul talking about the companies. In other words, the selective prosecution. The backstory of what they did by grabbing the chickens is that DXC, Direct Action Everywhere, had done an undercover operation prior to that, where they got infrared video of what happens on the slaughter, in the slaughterhouse. And we'll play that. It's very gruesome, so we don't like to play a lot of it. But the question is, is this selective prosecution? Because DXC had asked the DA to prosecute the company, and they did not respond even to that request.
The Californians passed a law that was supposed to improve the conditions of animals in factory farms. The problem is that lots of factory farms weren't following this law, even though more Californians than ever had chosen to vote for this specific proposition. And the government agencies weren't doing anything to enforce the enactment of this law to improve conditions for factory farm, especially egg-laying hens. So I chose to investigate a farm in Southern California to see if they were, in fact, following the law, and they were not.
So we've got Paige Parsons Roach here. Paige, you're a California resident, taxpayer. Do you think some of these jurors might say, wait, okay, if the companies are breaking the law, and I want to stress that Foster Farms insists that it's not, but if you believed Alexandra and the companies are breaking law and they're not prosecuting them, well, then it makes sense that the women did what she did.
Absolutely. We as consumers, many of us are making very conscious decisions about how we're purchasing and what we're purchasing, right? And I'm going to say who we're purchasing, but meanwhile, if we're not given the full story and we're being lied to me, I think that is illegal. So we've got to who's holding these companies accountable, by the way? Because if you don't know, then, you don't know, but are there checks and balances? And this undercover footage is showing that this cruelty is happening inside of the slaughterhouse, given what is the speed, the amount of pressure that's being put on these workers to provide this product on a mass scale. So again, who's doing the checks and balances? And it takes someone taking action like these activists to say, hey, whistleblower got this footage, and we're going to hold you to account for what you're selling.
I mean, if these women hadn't gone in there and taken these two chickens, would we ever know that these chickens had these very serious illnesses? And obviously, these are destined for the food system, is the question. Now, the issue of what's happening inside the Foster Farms slaughterhouse, again, Foster Farms, who's invited on anytime, insists they do absolutely everything by the book. But here is some DXC footage. I'll just show you a little of it. gives you you know, the emotional reaction, but the jury isn't going to see that. The jury is not going to see that. And that concerns me, Mick Davudian.
Yeah, I can understand the concern, but by the same token, the jury is made up of the average person, average people on the street. And I can't imagine that unless you've been living under a rock, you don't know what's happening behind closed doors in factory farms. This is a specific case for foster farms. I get it. But, you know, Facebook, social media, for at least a decade, we have seen these videos, and people are not blind. They probably decide to intentionally blind themselves to the reality if they're still consuming animal products, but they know what's happening. So I'm not quite sure that seeing this footage, which is really nowhere near as graphic as what you can find just by going to Google and YouTube or any of these platforms, you will be able to see at any given time of day.
Let's go to one more soundbite of Alexandra Paul talking about how she has done this kind of open rescue stuff before.
An example of an open rescue I was involved in when I was investigating a Southern California egg farm, and I rescued a chicken that was thrown into a dumpster. She was still alive, so there was lots of chicken dead bodies over her, but we managed to rescue her before she was suffocated.
So, yeah, I mean, this is a lot of gruesome testimony that the jurors are absorbing, and they may have gone in there, you know, thinking, what the heck is this all about? You know, oh my gosh, why is the government spending God only knows how many thousands of dollars, maybe even $1 million prosecuting this case, when we all know, if we watch the local news, that people go in and take a whole bunch of stuff from a you know, pharmacy or from a department store, and if it's under a certain amount, nobody prosecutes at all. And now we have these chickens worth very little, if anything, where they're putting this massive prosecution together. And apparently there was a city official who came in and sat at the trial today. That's what I heard. I'm not sure I can confirm that, but they may have, you know, started out saying, why is this even happening? But what do you think might be in their minds now? And maybe we could do a little round robin on that. Ellen Dent?
If I was on that jury, I'd have a lot of questions. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. If I was on that jury, I'd have a lot of questions right now, especially about foster farms. I mean, if this is by the book and business as usual, then they don't care about animal cruelty, which would bother me a lot, extremely. They don't care about the safety of the public. You know, that's obvious from what the veterinarian, Dr. Rosenberg, said, how sick just, you know, one of these chickens was on the truck, like you can imagine. They don't care. They don't care. All they care about is making money. All they care about is commodifying these individuals and calling them property. And for me, you cannot put a price on their lives. Just like you couldn't put a price on my own life or your life or any other animal's life. So that for me is really drives home. So I would have a lot of questions.
You know, I think that the essence of this whole case is, are these merely property things? And they've been compared to a car. Animals have been compared in the previous case where Wayne Shung was on trial in Utah to a dented can. Maybe we should even play that, because I think that the prosecution's arguments are very similar in both cases. We have the prosecutor's argument in the trial of Wayne Shung, who is now the attorney representing Alexandra Paul. Wayne Shung went into a pig factory farm and took out 2 sick piglets. He was famously acquitted, along with his co-defendant, Paul Pickle-Simon, on all charges, despite this prosecutor's closing argument. Let's hear it.
Analyze for just a moment the reasoning being demonstrated here tonight. I think it's clear that the pigs were stolen, they were taken, and they were not returned. In fact, Mr. Shung stated he didn't want to return. That's that. Imagine the use of the word rescue in some other context. Suppose you were in the grocery store and you saw a can with dents in it. And you thought to yourself, oh my goodness, that can has a dent. It has the potential of going bad. I better rescue that can, put it in my purse, take it out of the store. Or imagine.
There you go. Comparing a pig to a can. I mean, what you're shaking your head, Carla. What's your reaction?
I mean, the whole idea of, okay, let's take rescue into another area, right? And then to take it to a dented can. Well, how about we take the idea of rescue and put it into another context of, we've been saying a dog in a hot car, but what about all of the other times, like when a child is in a hot car, or if you see somebody beating somebody on the side of the road, whenever you see abuse, whenever you see these things happening, no matter who it is happening to, we all have a moral obligation to step in. And Alicia and Alexandra know that. And that is what the corporations are afraid of. The fact that we are taking these circumstances. The investigations are crucial in this. And you're right that I think it's a travesty that the jury won't get to see the video that Raven Deerbrook was able to obtain. I mean, this is not about whether they stole property. This is about whether they rescued individuals who were in need of medical care.
Okay, let me play. I found the one of the similar argument in this case made not in closing arguments, which don't happen till tomorrow, but listen, because it echoes exactly what the prosecutor in the previous case said. And remember, Wayne was acquitted in that case. So let's listen.
Defendants believe that they had a title or claim specifically to these chickens. That is what claim of right is about. They also are articulating that the chickens are treated so poorly that the chickens are trash. However, again, that is not a belief that argument that the chickens are somehow belong to the defendants, that merely that Foster Farms is not treating these chickens up to the defendant's subjective standards. If this defense, it would be like me hooking up one of the various vehicles left on people's yards to rot and driving away with it because they are being treated as trash. I don't have a good faith belief that the owner has some way relinquished their claim of ownership.
See, it's the same exact argument. It's, in this case, they're comparing the chickens to a car, Dotsie Bausch.
Yeah, I think that, through all of the millions of cases that could have come forward, because Alexandra's been arrested 24 times, and every single time it's been dropped. And at the end of the day, these corporations do not want the public to have any information that helps them to recognize that these are living, breathing, thinking beings. That's what they don't want to come forward. They offered Alexandra 5 different deals, Foster Farms did, to get out of this. And so this is just one example of how they try to dismantle the truth that they're beings when they're comparing them to a tin can and a car. But I think the public is getting smarter, they're getting wiser. And every step that we take with these brave activists getting arrested and trials like this being out in the open, and I guarantee tomorrow there will be some more mainstream media on this. The public is realize they're being hoodwinked. They do.
Well, you raise a very important point. I was so shocked once when I was reading this article about this woman who was eating a fast food sandwich, and there was a nipple that popped up in the deli slice, and she screamed and had a fit and threw the food around. And I was like, who did she think she was eating prior to discovering the nipple? Where do they think this is happening? This is like some kind of crazy willful denial that these are animals. And that's what this trial really is all about, that they're not things, that they are living, breathing beings. And that's why, and I got to go back to Nathan, the Non-Human Rights Project is holding a protest tomorrow outside New York City Hall. And I'm trying to find somebody to videotape it. And they're saying, hey, even though we lost our fight for habeas corpus for an elephant trapped in a zoo, rocking back and forth for years, we're now going to introduce legislation to try to get them a similar kind of legal status, because as long as they're property you can do anything with. Ultimately, that's the bottom line, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, Non-Human Rights Project does incredible work, and they came this close to getting personhood for the elephants at the Bronx Zoo. I mean, the case went to the Court of Appeals, and there were dissenting opinions there. But unfortunately, they lost, and so they have to get creative through legislation on a local and state and hopefully one day national level to get to protect these animals, to protect the zoo animals, and maybe one day to protect farm animals. I want to say one thing, with regard to these comparisons to inanimate objects. I think the DA in Utah and now the DA here in California, they embarrass themselves when they make these arguments. And as hard as they are to hear, I love that they do it, because they really put their foot in their mouth when they do it. And, beyond how wrong it is and how poor the analogy is, I think it's insulting to the jurors, quite honestly, because I think it sort of presupposes that jurors aren't compassionate, that jurors sort of like agree with this concept. And I think probably to a person, they don't, even if they eat animals, because most people do, but most people still, they don't want animals to suffer. It is, we all know about cognitive dissonance, but when you make that sort of claim in front of a jury, you insult them. And I am hopeful that the jury in Merced County will see it the same way as the jury in Utah did.
Now, thank you for that. There is another defendant, and we don't want to leave her out. The incredibly brave and articulate Alicia Santurio. I'm going to play a little bit of her cross-examination that we can discuss. Yes, go ahead.
I think this is important. Alexandra would want me to share this with you all. I just noticed a comment that someone said that the prosecuting attorney couldn't put his words together. Alexandra emailed me probably 3 days ago and said that the prosecuting attorney has a stutter. And she said to me in the email, I'm so impressed by this human. He finally shared it. I guess it took him a couple days to share it. She said it because it was very awkward beforehand because we didn't really know, but he shared that he had one. And she said, I have such respect that he became a trial attorney with a stutter. So I think it's important for your viewers to know that he can put his words together. He has a stutter.
Absolutely. And, in speaking up for defenseless animals, we do not want to in any way demean other beings. The whole point of our movement is that we're all earthlings and that everyone deserves respect, and all sentient beings, including the prosecutor, who's doing his job. I mean, everybody deserves an attorney, and there are prosecutors. That's your job. I know, as a reporter, did I want to cover every story I was assigned to? No. Okay. That's why I became my own assignment editor, but it only took me 40 years. So anyway, a good point. Let me go to Alicia Santurio and her cross-examination.
By me entering these facilities, I'm finding criminal animal abuse,
I'm
and
sorry,
that's, well, I'm answering the question.
Okay,
hold on a
second. That's not my question.
But
my question is setting aside what you believe is going on inside.
Okay.
You entering these buildings uninvited, do you believe that's wrong?
No, because what I'm doing is to prevent a greater harm, and I believe that's covered under the necessity defense.
Okay, so you believe that what you did is okay?
Yes.
All right, so you believe what you did in this case is okay, as you sit here today?
Rescuing Ethan and Jack?
Taking the chicken out of when you run up to the trailer, you take the chicken and you run back, you believe that was okay?
Yes.
All right, so this was a chicken that was on the truck that was heading into the Foster Farms plant, right?
Your Honor, objection. This was asked and answered specifically on cross-examination.
So this was a chicken on a truck that you knew to be a Foster Farms truck, right?
Yes.
And Foster Farms truck was going to the Foster Farms processing plant in Livingston, right?
Yes, it was parked outside.
It was parked outside. Were you aware that there was a U-Haul blocking the entrance to the Foster Farms plant?
Objection. This was also asked and answered during the prosecution's first cross-examination.
Were you aware of that?
Yes, we saw the U-Haul there.
Did you have any role in getting the U-Haul to block the entrance yourself?
No.
I don't know how effective that cross-examination is. I mean, I'd like to get everybody's take on it. And, you know, we don't want to just be kumbaya, like, yay, and then be shocked. I do think, though, that it was kind of like, she's like, yeah, yes, I think I did the right thing. Donnie.
Well, both Alexandra and Alicia are unassuming, and I can't help but wonder if the jurors are thinking, you know what, now that they realize that this is about something bigger than just grabbing two chickens off of the truck, maybe these jurors are saying to themselves, I think I would be, well, I'm glad someone's doing what they're doing and exposing this. I mean, you know, they're consumers too. They would want people looking out for their interests. And now they know that Foster Farms and these big animal ag companies aren't going to be doing that. They're motivated solely by profit. So, God, I think that their testimony, regardless of who's questioning them, has been impactful.
I know you wanted Dotsie to ask a question of Nathan. Go for it.
Actually, it's me. My question of Nathan is, so Nathan, let's say I'm driving along the road. I see a deer. I move out of the way of the deer and I crash into someone's car. If I were on trial for that, let's say, wouldn't I be able to express why I hit the car? I was averting the crash into the animal. And the reason I ask this is because if the defendants are unable to share that why their intent, you know, do you see where I'm thinking? Like, what if they're not allowed to, do you see what I'm grappling with?
I have to point out, in all full disclosure, Paige drove a group of us to Arizona. She had a car accident within about 20 minutes of leaving.
And that was not when we were filming the baby cows that were being transported.
I know. I'm teasing you. I'm making a little joke. But you know what we did? We pulled the car over. The car that ended up hitting us from the rear, we jumped out and we just said, young lady, go vegan. And we all got back in our car and drove away. And that's exactly what we did. Remember that? Okay. Can you answer that question, Nathan?
So Paige, you're looking for legal advice? No. Well, you know, I mean,
on live TV.
It seems like, you know, the defense in this case is getting that opportunity to explain why they did what they did. So I think it's similar. I mean, you know, in a criminal case, the defense has no burden. They don't have to testify. Here, they proudly testified. But I think, you know, it's similar to why you had to swerve and why the deer was struck. They're saying, you know, the reason we did what we did is because these birds were sick and we were rescuing them. We weren't stealing them.
Yeah. So now I want to ask about jury instructions because those are very important. They say the case is won and lost on jury selection and also when it comes time to jury instructions. Here's my question. Is it possible that the judge is going to say, look, none of this other matters. These animals are property and you have to decide whether property was stolen or not, period, end of story. That could be very, very challenging. Mick Davudian.
Wow, of course, put me on the spot. Yeah, it would be challenging, of course, but I don't know. Maybe Nathan can talk through this again because a lot of stuff is legal. Can that happen? I don't know. The jury, by the same token, can decide, I think, if I'm not mistaken, can decide on their own the merits of the case. Now, if the judge says that, could the jury go and say, no, we don't think they should be found guilty? I don't know.
Nathan?
Can you ask the question one more time, Jane?
Well, what I'm saying is there was a battle today over jury instructions, and they're very crucial. They're the most boring part of the trial. As a reporter, I've sat there, jury instructions, oh my God, but they're so important because it really creates the context in which the jury has to make the decision. So if the judge is biased, and we saw in the previous case in Utah that there was no disputing, the judge started out very biased and hostile toward Wayne, although by the end he was referring to the pigs by their name, Lizzie and Lily, which shows that he was having a personal evolution during the trial, perhaps. But I mean, for lack of a better word, can the judge screw over the defense with their jury instructions?
Yeah, I mean, they can. Fortunately, from what we've heard, from Wayne throughout, is it seems this judge has, number one, taken the case, seriously, has been seemingly pretty fair. I mean, he's given the defense some, and he's given the prosecution some. So I don't think there's any reason to think otherwise for the jury charge. But you're right. I mean, a judge, depending upon how they charge the jury on the law, could really impact the verdict. That can certainly happen.
Carla, you were in the courtroom. Do you think this was a fair judge?
Absolutely, I do. I think that this judge has been very good about stressing the seriousness of this trial and about making sure that the jury was fair and impartial as much as one can make a jury fair and impartial given the information that the jurors provide. I think that the judge has been extremely fair. And something that I wanted to mention is, a lot of this has gone down to what the intent was. And I think that has been explained very well. And I'm glad that evidence has made it in explaining why this rescue happened. And going to value, there's just been so much talk about the value, intrinsic value, market value. And I'd say that really, when you look at the evidence that was provided, Jax and Ethan were a liability to foster farms. They were a liability because of the diseases that they had. And I can tell you that to this day, Jax is still in quarantine. Jax will live the rest of his life in quarantine because of the very serious nature of the disease that he harbors.
And here is a shot of Jax at an undisclosed sanctuary where he is living out a good life, but in quarantine. Do you think that there should have been a video of chickens, not just the defense played the video that I just played of Alexandra and Alicia rescuing the chickens from the truck, but do you think there should have been some video of the chickens themselves, or a chicken, or some kind of testimony about the sentience of chickens? We know, because we cover this a lot, that chickens each has their own unique individual personality. They are fun. They can be like pets. We did a whole series on Unchained TV called "You Gotta Have Hope" about a chicken who lives with a family here in Los Angeles and rules the roost. Was there any of that? Were they able, do you think, to see chickens as individuals? And I think I have to go back to Carla on that because you were in court.
I hope that is the case, that they are, through everything that they are being shown and told, that they are learning that chickens, as well as all sentient beings, are individuals, that they have unique personalities. I know that Celeste touched on Celeste Yamada, who also cared for Jax and Ethan. upon their rescue. She was able to testify, and I know she spoke briefly about the fact that we had to build these slings, makeshift slings for them to be in because they were unable to stand and walk. So we built, they were like wheelchairs basically for them to sit in so that their feet would be able to hang. So because the weight on their legs, it can just be so torturous. So we make sure that we get them up and hold them and walk them a little bit, and then give them that time to kind of sit and eat in the sling as well. And I hope that telling the jurors about things like that goes to show how deeply important their lives are, that they have meaning, and that they deserve to live.
Jane, let me ask, jump in for a sec. So in the testimony Dr. Rosenberg was providing today, there was quite a bit of a video. Well, not a long amount of video, long portion of video, but quite a long time on the screen. Wayne was methodically going through a video of the chickens post-rescue at the sanctuary and kind of pausing at certain moments. And the jury did get a sense of the chickens, the two specific chickens we're talking about, Ethan and Jax. And Dr. Rosenberg was specifically talking about how sick they were, that they were suffering with, with their legs, that they're bred so, they're so inbred. She said 100 years ago, this breed of chicken, I believe she said in 16 weeks would reach 2 pounds. And right now, these chickens are the same chickens, have been so bred artificially that in 6 weeks, they reach 6 pounds. And the legs cannot support them. And then at one point, they paused on a video of Ethan, who eventually passed away, where he kind of tried to stand up, but he kind of, within a couple of seconds, had to lie down, and he closed his eyes. And Dr. Rosenberg said that is basically a red flag when one of these animals who during the daytime at a place that they're not familiar with because they had just gotten to the sanctuary, when they close their eyes, that is a bad sign because normally they would be looking out for predators.
Once again, let's just replay a little bit of what Dr. Rosenberg said, which was considered a bombshell in testimony today as the trial was wrapping up. The case goes to the jury tomorrow.
These were two extremely sick chickens. At the time, I was concerned they might not survive. They were infected with an extremely contagious coronavirus called infectious bronchitis virus. It's a very, up to, or not up to, 100% of birds that are exposed will get sick. Very contagious virus. They also were infected with 2 bacteria that can make human beings sick.
And what were those 2 bacteria?
So we're wrapping up for today. Again, we will have coverage tomorrow. I'm actually trying to think of what time we should start our coverage because we do schedule in advance to go on the streaming network and we have to pick a time, but we don't know when the jury's going to come back. They could come back in an hour after getting the case. They could come back in 5 days. Unlikely, but you never know. In any case, let's do a round robin and, talk a little bit about what your takeaway was, what you think, what the meaning of this trial as the jury is getting set to hear the case. Let's start with Paige Parsons-Roach.
Well, I'm hoping that the jury will deliberate on their moral compass, that they will actually stop and pause and realize the ones that need to be persecuted are the factory farms, the foster farms, and that they will actually stop and think about what is being said here as a human being, human to human being. What would they do in the case of seeing an animal that's suffering? Would they just walk by, not do anything, or would they actually stop and take some kind of an action? So I'm hoping that the jury will sit with it, will think about it, and will think about what they would do in the case and what they'd want their children to do. So what are they teaching? That they can be, or the future generations, that they can be an example of the right thing to do.
Excellent point. Ellen Dent.
Yeah, I agree with Paige. I hope that they internalize everything that they've learned in this, in this trial, and they make the right decision. They make the decision from their heart. They make the decision to be on the right side of history, and to decide that these women were rescuing these other animals. Because it just makes my blood boil when I hear them called property, when I hear a value put on their lives, because their lives are their own. And I can't wait for a time when our species has evolved past this notion that their lives belong to us, that their bodies belong to us, because it's wrong. It's a fundamentally wrong idea that they belong to us, and I saw one of the comments in the chat about abolishing slavery, and I couldn't help but think of my ancestors, and how they were put on ships and how their lives were taken away from them, as part of the transatlantic slave trade, and what happened for hundreds of years inside of our country, in the United States of America. So we have to change this narrative. These women, Alicia, Santurio, and Alexandra Paul, are so brave to put their freedom at risk, to do this, to bring this truth out to the public, to make them think and to change, to make change for other animals so they are not enslaved anymore, so that their lives are not taken away from them. And somebody has to do this. We are all doing this. And I completely commend them and I admire them. And I hope that the jury makes that connection, that these are individuals on the trucks and they are being mistreated and they were rescued. They were not stolen, they were rescued.
And I think it's significant that it's a mostly female jury because, females have been persecuted and considered property and chattel in the past. So this concept, and I love what you said, Ellen, for any sentient being to be considered property means they're not in charge of their own lives, that their lives intrinsically don't matter. And this is, I think, a fundamental turning point in human history because our denigration and for us to win, some other being has to lose attitude is now killing us and killing the planet. So we are watching an historic trial right now. Dotsie Bausch, your final thought.
I don't think anyone needs to follow up from Ellen. That was just extraordinary to listen to. I know it's recorded, so I'm going to press replay on that, girl. Amen and high five. I think I'd actually like to end with a very short story from Alexandra as it relates to this trial and as it relates to the steps forward that this trial is taking, and that every time this quagmire gets brought up, are animals ours, or are they there? Are they here for their own reasons and to live their own lives freely? And as we all know now, Alexandra has been an activist her whole life. And she's told the story a few times on the podcast that when she was working really hard to get circuses shut down, Barnum and Bailey, which they were successful with, she just was fighting so hard to free the elephants, get the circus shut down. And there was this other side that was fighting to get rid of bull hooks. And she said, I thought, that's so weak. Like, get rid of bull hooks. Who cares? Like, yeah, those are awful, but let's free the elephants, right? Let's really step up and do the right thing. And she said, at the end of the day, the circus, well, not the circus, but the people that were fighting against the circus, which shut down the circus, it went to court to eliminate bull hooks. And she said, what I didn't realize was you cannot train an elephant without a bull hook. So this trial is a step, just like that was a step towards total animal liberation.
Absolutely. And just on a personal note, one of the very first stories I covered as an independent journalist after a long career on TV was the protest against Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus in Brooklyn. You may have been there, Donnie. It was, I think, 2015 in the dead of winter, 9 degrees. I'll never forget it. 200 people standing there shaking, and it didn't seem like anybody was paying that much attention. But guess what? Thanks to the work of Alexandra Paul, PETA, and many other groups, Ringling Brothers went out of business. Now, supposedly, they may be coming back without animals. It's hard to see progress in real time, but progress is being made. All right, Mick Davidian, your final thought for today.
One of the things DXC, I think, and a lot of organizations like to say is what animal liberation, human freedom, or something of that nature. And it's true, it goes hand in hand. I mean, we are fighting a fight not just for animals. This is a slavery at a mass scale. I mean, Ellen referenced it, and I'm not going to talk to that point. But we are fighting an industry that doesn't care about animals, doesn't care about humans, doesn't care about our environment. All they care about is the almighty dollar. They are a for-profit company. The press release that you keep reading, rightfully, is written up literally as a business plan. Their business model is basically these animals are products, get them through the conveyor line as quickly as you can, no matter what happens to the animals, no matter what happens to the workers. And you can give your disclaimer after I say this, Jane, I'm sure of it. But in 2013, we all remember one of the longest cases of the salmonella outbreak in our country that, sickened hundreds of people, I think thousands perhaps, and scores of people died. Foster Farms had one of the worst episodes, worst outbreaks, and they only shut down, I believe, 8 or 9 months afterwards, when the government stepped in and forced them to shut down after they had 6 or 7 of their own slaughterhouse workers die.
Well, I think you're talking about the COVID.
COVID, I'm sorry, right.
And yes, I hear you. And I will say Foster Farms is invited on anytime. And yes, they have said that they have done absolutely nothing illegal. And so I get your point, though, Mick. Your point is that, yes, these are for-profit companies, and there's an inherent dichotomy saying our team members care about animal welfare. The whole point of the company is to kill animals for food, which is ultimately a consumer issue. So did you want to finish off what you were saying? I'm sorry.
No, that was the point. Thank you for recapping it.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Who's next? Carla.
Look, I think that we all know that this feels like a David and Goliath situation. Here we are with a huge corporation against the little animal rights activists. And I hope that the jury takes on board all of the evidence that was presented. I think that on the merits of the evidence alone, they can win. Sometimes it feels like, well, the law says that these animals are property and they stole that property, but that is not at all what this is about. I mean, for us, we want chickens and pigs and cows and sheep and ducks and turkeys and every individual to be seen and heard and be granted the gift of living unharmed by human hands. But the letter of the law is not always moral or just. And I think that these jurors have an opportunity, even following the letter of the law, to bring in their humanity and show the world that it's the right to rescue, that what Alicia, Santurio, and Alexandra Paul did was the right thing to do. And hopefully this is, as you say, one more step towards the ultimate right to rescue and complete animal liberation.
And Ellen just quoted Reagan Russell, who was killed outside a slaughterhouse in Canada by a slaughter truck. She was run over, and she was famous for saying, if we were on those trucks, we would want to be rescued too. All right, Donnie Moss, final thought for today. We will continue our trial coverage tomorrow.
Yeah, I just want to close the loop on quickly on 3 topics we discussed. First, the nipple sandwich. We say that, you mentioned the viral video in which a woman flipped out because she found a nipple in her meat sandwich. And it's not surprising because the industry goes to great lengths to disconnect the animal from the package of meat that people buy in the grocery store. When you see those 2 chicken breasts in a package, you're not really thinking about the face and the other body parts that come along with that animal. Obviously, that's all by design. Number 2, we were talking about the media blackout on these issues. And it's not just because they have to curry favor with their advertisers, but it's also because you have assignment editors and reporters and cameramen and all of these other people who consume animals. And ignorance is bliss. They don't want to report on these stories. And quite frankly, their viewers probably don't want to see them. And so that's part of the problem here. And that's part of why social media has been helpful, because we've been able to get this footage out to we've been able to circumvent the mainstream media. And my final thought is that, the 2 defendants are on trial for, allegedly committing a crime, but the entire system of animal agriculture is a crime in the state of California. The state law prevents states that you can't be cruel to animals. But the entire system, from when they're born in a hatchery to when they're killed in the slaughterhouse, is horrifically cruel. So it's just the wrong people are on trial here.
Yeah, and a proposition that would ban the sale of this horrific of farmed animal meat that is produced using horrific methods like pig gestation crates. That is before the Supreme Court right now. The pork industry challenged it. And any day now, we could have a decision coming down by the Supreme Court. And I want to point out that the Biden administration sided with the pork producers against the will of the California people who passed that proposition. Shame on the administration for doing so. All right. I think we've got Nathan Semmel. You're last but not least, mister.
Oh, no, the pressure. Well, my takeaway from today as it related to the trial is that Dr. Rosenberg was a superstar. I mean, first and foremost, she's an expert witness who was able to corroborate exactly what Alexandra and Alicia said, which is that they saw sick animals, and she confirmed that they were, in fact, sick animals. And you can't really attack Dr. Rosenberg's credentials. I mean, she is an expert in her field. She knows what she's doing, and any attempt to discredit her is just gonna fall on deaf ears. But more than that, and this is a dream for the defense, is she, in sort of one fell swoop, corroborated the 2 accused, and also completely vilified the industry. I mean, we all heard her testimony in those clips, so it sort of flipped the script and completely criminalized properly Foster Farms. So much so that we also learned today that the prosecution felt the need to put on a witness to try to rebut Dr. Rosenberg, because they probably felt her testimony was so devastating to the prosecution. And who do they put on? They put on a high-level executive from Foster Farms in a misdemeanor case. That tells me, we commented earlier about how there's really minimal to no media attention here. This tells me they don't want to lose. They don't want to lose again like Smithfield lost, because that could bring a lot of attention here. So to me, the story of the day was Dr. Rosenberg, and I think it was probably a good day for the defense.
Wow. Well, I want to thank everybody. We're going to be back tomorrow here on Unchained TV with our fabulous panel. We're going to start early because tomorrow morning, and I don't know what time court starts, but I think it's 10. There's going to be closing arguments, then jury instructions to the jury. Then the jury goes, maybe has lunch or works through lunch. They have to choose a 4-person, and they could come back very quickly. So, of course, I'm agonizing, full disclosure, when do we start? Because for our streaming network, we have to set the app to go live prior. We can't just go live like that. And we are on our global streaming network, and people are watching. and they're enjoying this trial coverage. So I don't really know when to start. I would say that it would probably be 2:00 would be a smart time, because even if they came back with a decision in an hour, then they'd have to go into court. That you'd have to give at least 15 minutes for a court to assemble, and then they would read the verdict, and then people would come out and we would catch that. So I think 2:00 is probably a smart time. 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Is everybody cool with that? Yay. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And please share this out. If you're watching on the app, you can hit a share button and share it to whoever you want. You can share it to your Twitter. You can share it to your Facebook. And if you're on Facebook, also you can share it. So I want to say my heart is so grateful for everybody on this panel and everybody watching, because we can make a difference. We can break through the mainstream media blackout. If you think of repressive regimes where people are secretly, back in the old days, printing out little leaflets and putting them here and there, even Martin Luther just hammering some complaints to the church wall or church door, right? But that's how it gets out. So don't underestimate your ability to get the word out. And the most powerful tool you have is your phone right here and that share button. Share it out. Thank you so much, everybody. And we are going to say goodbye with a final comment from who else? Alexandra Paul.
I've always wanted to help. It's in my family's DNA. So I was a junior lifeguard when I was a teenager, and that helped me get the role for which I'm most known, which you mentioned in your opening. So it was the television series Baywatch, but I've also been in over 100 other television shows, even though that's probably going to be on my gravestone. But I was a junior lifeguard. That probably helped me get that job. And I also was an emergency medical technician for 20 years.
Hi, Unchained. It's Alexandra. Thank you so much for being here and covering the trial. We really appreciate it.
Young chickens are fattened up in filthy conditions before they're loaded on a truck and transported for slaughter.